Once it was all just science fiction. Now, intelligent machines are rapidly replacing human effort. Such technology has brought about driverless cars and advancements in medicine. Even your voice-activated smartphone has more computer power than NASA used to go to the moon. This week, the BBC is looking at how artificial intelligence is rapidly changing the world we know. Does AI just make our lives easier, or does it pose a threat? Calum Chase is from Stenning and is author of a new book, Surviving AI. Good morning, Calum.
Morning, Danny.
Fascinating field, this. What brings you to it, by the way? Are you a computer geek, a buff? What's your past?
No, my professional background is business. I spent 30 years in business, but I've always read probably too much science fiction. And at college, I read philosophy, which I discovered is science fiction without the fancy dress. So I've always been interested in the idea of superintelligence and computers getting smarter than us, but I always assumed it would happen long after I was dead. And around 2000, I read a book by a chap called Ray Kurzweil, which made me think that, wow, it could happen in my lifetime or my children's lifetime. And then around 2011, I took the opportunity to stop working for other people, had more time, and I started reading a lot about it, really intensively studying it and writing about it.
And you had a fiction novel, and this Surviving AI is a bit more fact-based, is it?
That's right. In March, I published a science fiction novel called Pandora's Brain, which is partly set in Brighton and partly set in my adopted hometown of Stenning. And then I'm just publishing Surviving AI, which is a non-fiction book, and it's kind of a review for people, both people who are already interested in the subject and people who are coming new to it.
Surviving AI suggests a potential threat that the human race will need to survive. Is that your suggestion?
It is, very much. I think we have a very good chance of making AI a wonderful tool for our future in lots of ways, but there's no doubt that there is a threat, both in terms of technological unemployment, which was covered in the Panorama programme last night, and the possibility of superintelligence. If we become the second smartest species on the planet, that's an uncomfortable place to be.
Okay, because I don't know, maybe in sci-fi movies, the threat from robots, supercomputers, all of that, is that at some stage they become self-aware and we can't pull the plug out. Or if we pull the plug out, they do something else to stop us being in control of them. Is that the threat?
Well, that is a threat. I mean, how would you pull the plug out of the internet, for instance? You know, we're already at the...
You can't, because you can pull one plug out, there's 5,000 to replace it.
Exactly. It was designed to be resilient to multiple points of attack. That's the whole point of it. And if a superintelligence got out onto the internet, we would not be able to terminate it.
Is that the most likely way something like that would happen? Because the internet, everything we do today in the modern world, working at home, has an internet connection to it.
Nobody who's remotely sane is going to let a superintelligence free on the internet without taking great care in advance that it is safe for humanity. But of course, mistakes can be made.
And also, there are some people with some pretty too much time on their hands and some pretty unpleasant thoughts.
Yeah, you'd have to be not only angry with the human race, you'd have to be completely suicidal. Now, of course, there are people like that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay. I mean, there's a huge amount of work already going into a project called Friendly AI, or Safe Artificial Intelligence, which is working out how to make sure that the first artificial general intelligence, which is human-level intelligence, that the first one of those is safe for humans. It's a difficult problem because how do you define safe for humans? You know, we've been arguing since the ancient Greeks about what a good life is. So how do you tell a computer, you're about to become a superintelligence, we want you to promote the welfare of humans? We don't really know what that is.
So would this be a single computer that you're talking about at the moment? And would it have a kind of human incarnation? Would it be inside a robot or something? Or just sitting in some dark cave somewhere?
Most likely, the first superintelligence will be resident on a very large number of servers. It will probably be the size of a warehouse. We don't know, because we don't know how it's going to happen or when it's going to happen. And to be honest, we don't even know if it's going to happen. We don't know whether there'll be one initially, called a singleton, or whether there'll be a whole community of them. It depends partly on the way that it's created.
Okay, so let's look at the pros and cons. How would artificial intelligence be really useful in our day-to-day lives?
Okay, so we have two big changes coming up. I call them the economic singularity and the technological singularity. The first one, the economic singularity, is when maybe a majority of people become unemployable because computers can do any job they can do better and cheaper. And as we know, computers don't get drunk, they don't need to sleep, they don't need a pay rise, and so on. that could be a very good event for humanity, because we may get to what the excitable folk in Silicon Valley call radical abundance, and the robots and the computers do all the work, and humans live lives of leisure. We play sport, we chat with our mates, we get drunk every now and then, and we improve ourselves. That could be great. Or we might get a sort of a technological dystopia where a small number of people, Larry Page and a few friends, own everything. You know, they own the AI, they own everything else, and everybody else lives on their handouts. Could be dangerous.
Okay. So there you go. You got the pros and cons
of the first stage, which is the economic singularity. The technological singularity comes later, and that is if, and it's still a big if, and when we create an artificial general intelligence, so a system, an AI, which has all the cognitive abilities of a human. It may be utterly unlike our intelligence. It might be a completely alien intelligence. But it will have goals, because all intelligences have goals. That's part of the definition of an intelligence. And if it wants to improve the welfare of humans, if it wants us around and wants us to do well, then again, that could be a truly wonderful outcome. In fact, and this is where things get a bit starry-eyed, and a lot of people are going to think, well, this is just science fiction. We may become immortal, and we may become godlike. That's the good stuff. The bad stuff is...
Hang on, what do you mean by that? Godlike and immortal?
Well, godlike in the sense of say, the ancient Greek gods, not so much the Abrahamic Christian and Muslim gods. But what I mean by that is we would be able to do pretty much anything we wanted. You know, if we have a superintelligence on our side, and this superintelligence, you have to understand that it could become 1,000 times smarter than us quite quickly. It could become 1,000,000 times smarter than us. So it will discover new laws of physics and new ways to do things. It might even discover time travel. And it will discover how to defeat aging, and we can travel among the stars and exploit what has been called our cosmic endowment. As you can tell, it can get quite starry-eyed at this point. But, you know, it's not impossible. It's absolutely not impossible.
Because, and this is where we need to look back, how far we've come. In introduction, I said that in my smartphone that I'm holding in my hand here, is there genuinely more computing in this telephone than sent rockets to the moon?
Than sent Neil Armstrong to the moon. Neil Armstrong to the moon, definitely. Yeah.
That's pretty mind-blowing, isn't it, for a start?
It is. And the wonderful thing is, you know, we just take it for granted.
Because also, the computing power in this phone really has only got to this stage in the last few years, hasn't it?
It has, and it is progressing on a path which is exponential. Now, it's really important people understand what exponential progress means. It means that you double something every period. So, for instance, if you were to take 30 steps, you'd travel about 30 yards. If you could take 30 exponential steps, you'd go 1 yard in the first step, 2 in the second, 4 in the third, 8 in the fourth.
So it doubles with each repetition?
It doubles with each repetition. And guess where you would get to on the 30th step?
I don't know, 300 yards away or something ridiculous.
You'd get to the moon. Now, actually, that's not quite right. The 29th step would take you to the moon.
Yeah.
The 30th step would bring you all the way back.
Okay,
that's the power of exponential progress. And computers are on a path of exponential progress called Moore's law. Moore's law, oversimplifying, is the phenomenon, it's not a law, it's a phenomenon, that computer processing power doubles. The processing power, say, of £1,000 of a computer doubles every 18 months.
Which is really frustrating in the here and now, because every time you buy a computer, you know, in a couple of years' time, it's going to seem a bit slow, and you think, I've got to lay out another several £100s for a quicker one.
Yeah, that's true. There is
really frustrating. So are the manufacturers purposely holding it back at that rate, or is that the actual genuine rate of advancement?
Oh, that's the genuine rate of advancement. I mean, you know, the computing manufacturing is a massively competitive industry, and people produce the best possible computer they can at the time. It's just that, you know, thanks to Moore's law, that what's available in 2 years' time is much, much better.
In a way, that's a bit reassuring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where does all this leave us then? What do you summarise from all this, Calum? Is this generally a good thing for us? I don't know how we should be feeling about this.
It's potentially a good thing. It's potentially a very good thing. There is potential for downside. I think the bottom line is we have to monitor what's happening, both in the short term or the medium term, really, in regard to technological unemployment. We need to work out, you know, are people becoming unemployed? Because there are a lot of people who say, actually, as computers get smarter and smarter, they will simply relieve us of all the grunt work, and humans will sort of scoot up the value chain, if you like.
Big picture stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Blue sky thinking, all of that.
Yeah. Personally, I think we're going to get to the point somewhere in 30, 40 years' time where actually the computers have chased us pretty much to the top of the pyramid, and really only a few people will be needed to work. But as I say, if we get that transition right, and it's a big challenge, if we get it right, we can have an economy of radical abundance, and everybody does really nicely. So I think the takeaway from all of this is there is potentially enormous good and potentially enormous bad, and we have to make sure that we get the good stuff.
But who governs it? That's the problem, because this country is run by a government, France is run by theirs. This is going to be a global issue. Now, who's in charge of that?
Nobody. There isn't anybody in charge. There's a whole load of people working on AI because now AI works. It produces marvelous tools and devices for us.
Siri on your smartphone, the thing that you speak to, and it understands what you're saying and gives you good answers to what you request.
Yeah, absolutely. The big US tech titans, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, IBM, they're all pursuing AI like nobody's business, and also huge Chinese companies, lots of great British companies like SwiftKey. There's tons of people progressing AI. You can't stop it and you can't control it, but what we can do is work out how to make it safe, because all of those people, none of those people want to let loose on the world rampant technological unemployment. None of those people want to let loose a super intelligence, which is evil, but we need to make sure that we get the good outcomes.
But if you think those people are doing good work, the people who are making viruses and Trojans and trying to bring down computer systems now, they're going to be pulling in the opposite direction just as hard, aren't they?
Absolutely right. And security is already a huge issue, and it's going to get to be a bigger issue. I mean, imagine when you have most of the driving fleet is self-driving vehicles.
Yeah.
Imagine a hacker says, right, every vehicle now turn left.
Yes.
All at the same time.
Okay. That was the thing that I was kind of coming to, actually. Just the thought of, when I can replace the car that I have to drive genuinely with one that will bring me to work every day, take me to see my dad, take the kids out, whatever it is. When am I going to get one of those? When is that really going to be possible on the streets of Brighton as you look out the window now?
Well, it's happening incrementally. There are already cars out there which will overtake for you and which will follow other cars safely on the motorway. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be a big bang when sort of one day we're all driving our own cars and the next day computers are doing the whole thing. But I would say that, and going out on a limb and with knowledge that all forecasts are wrong, I would say that by about 2030, maybe 2035, it will be illegal for humans to drive on most public roads.
That'd be perfect, because by then I'll be past retirement age. I probably won't be able to drive anymore, but I can have a vehicle that will take me to those places. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
I suppose the most dangerous part is the point where you've got self-driving cars and humans still driving cars, because the humans will be the ones that make the mistakes.
As is already the case. Google's cars have driven over 1 million miles in California. They've had a few accidents. All of the accidents have been caused by humans. I mean,
So once you take the humans out of the equation, they won't bump. They won't be allowed to bump into each other.
Exactly. They won't have accidents. At the moment, we're sending humans to do a machine's job.
Is it good to be born this year? And think of all that will happen between 2015 and 60, 70, 80 years in the future.
I think this is a fabulous time to be born. But I think, just being alive now, we've got a shot at a fabulous future.
Okay, well, all of that explored in Calum Chase's book. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
My pleasure.
Fascinating. Calum Chase, and the book is called Surviving AI.